Hello and welcome to my presentation in Technology in Art. My name is Uwe Türten. I'm a lecturer in design. I would like to open my presentation with a painting created by Eddie Wagenknecht. And she has created this painting with the help of a drone. So what are drones? You might wonder. We will discuss this later throughout my presentation. The art challenges the technology and the technology inspires the art. A quote by John Lasseter. It's very true. Since we are creating art, we are using technology, be it a simple, humble paintbrush all the way to a stylus pen drawing on a computer surface, or drones, or 3D printing. The boom in 3D printed art has been building for several years. In fact, it seems no corner of the world remains untouched by 3D printing. From architecture to dance, to painting to music, the emergence and proliferation of drone technology, another technology using drones, just like Eddie Wagenknecht's painting that we just saw, has inspired a vibrant response from the art world. Drone art includes both works that are created using a drone or depicting a drone. Then another way where technology is heavily used is projection mapping. Projection mapping, also known as video mapping and spatial augmented reality, is a projection technology used to turn objects, often irregularly shaped, into a display surface for video projection. You all might have seen projection mapping art on the Sydney Opera recently or in the past. It was only a matter of time before the art world went virtual too. Indeed, the ubiquity of smartphones and the public's increasing familiarity with augmented reality, short AR, apps in other spheres is beginning to have a tangible impact on how art is both created and displayed. And this is the purpose of my presentation. I will now take you through a few art samples to illustrate how this all could work. The following artwork depicts a very tiny sculpture, a sculpture of a woman. And this sculpture is, as you can see, on this ear of the needle, there is the little tiny sculpture inside. And underneath we have a focused in picture of it. And it's created by John Hurwitz. And it received the Guinness World Record for smallest human sculpture in the world fabricated using nano 3D printing. So this person here, the sculpture, has been printed using carbon fiber. Amazing. I would like to play a video on 3D printing. And 3D printing, or also known as additive manufacturing, is a process of making three-dimensional solid objects from a digital file. A digital file is a computer file that you can create using computer drawing software. And then obviously it is created in 2 dimensions on a screen and then printed using additive methods to have a 3-dimensional object. So here is the video.
3D printing technology is already changing the way we produce objects, from tools and toys to clothing and even body parts. 3D printing is part of a process known as additive manufacturing, where an object is created by adding material layer by layer. Additive manufacturing allows designers to create complex parts for machines, airplanes, and cars at a fraction of the cost and time of standard means like forging, molding, and sculpting. Now, smaller, consumer-friendly 3D printers are bringing additive manufacturing to homes and businesses. The first step in 3D printing is to create a blueprint of the object you want to print. You can use modeling software like Blender to create your own designs, or you can visit websites like Thingiverse or Shapeways to find objects other users have 3D modeled. Once you have a finished design, it's time to send it to the printer. Some printers, like the MakerBot Replicator 2, have renewable bioplastic spooled in the back of the device, almost like a string. When the printer receives the data, it pulls the material through a tube, melts it, and deposits it to the plate where it instantly cools. As you can see, the 3D object is created through layering, where the printer will add one layer of the object at a time until you have a fully formed structure. The most common material used in 3D printing is plastic, but the use of some other materials allow for the creation of some pretty amazing products beyond simple tools and toys. 3D printing food is becoming very popular, and additive manufacturing has allowed for the creation of some pretty intricate treats. In the medical world, doctors are testing biomaterials for regenerative medicine. By using a patient's cells, doctors could 3D print small body parts like ears and noses. Some surgeons have even tested 3D printed organs for transplants. Recently, giant 3D printers in China printed 10 houses in just one day and at a cost of less than $5,000 per house, proving just how cost and time-efficient 3D printing can be.
This is artwork using several objects that have been 3D printed, and all of those objects are inspired by nature, mainly from the world of the ocean. This artwork is by Marion Coletti, and it's called Algae from 2013. From the same artist, Marion Coletti, Algae, it's a series, but this time it's not put on a canvas that hangs off a wall. So those objects are placed on the ground, and she is using different materials. One is more translucent than the other, and we can see how nicely the light plays through the sculpture. That sculpture here, which is called Fragile and is egg-shaped, is by Richard Beckett. And it is also printed in 3D using a plastic which is called PLA. And PLA is recyclable and biodegradable. You put it into a pressurized container and heat it up to 80 degrees and it will dissolve. So it's quite environmental friendly. So this larger sculpture here by Michael van der Klee, it's called Egg, from 2014, is made up by several 3D printed objects that have been assembled to the shape of an egg. This piece of art is using a little bit more color, and it is called Nano Objects from 2014 by Shane Hope. And it also reminds me of some corals, but it could be anything. And all of those objects are 3D printed and quite filigree. William F. Duffy has created a sculpture, also 3D printed. If you have a close look, you see all the different layers of the additive process, because 3D printing means that one layer of plastic is printed on top of the other. So we can see all those different layers around here. And it is called Sometimes from 2014. So we already mentioned that we can print plastics, but we can print all sorts of materials. We can print in timber, and we also can print in metal, like this piece here, which is a shell that was 3D printed in metal and then shaped around a car by Joan Florea, and it's called Gran Torino 1971, which is the car underneath. But the piece of art is from 2014 because in 1971 3D printing did not exist. Here we have another sculpture by Nick Erving. It's called Agribors, 3D printed facial nerves. The advantage of 3D printing is that we can create shapes that would be very, very difficult to create otherwise, would take a lot of time and cost a lot of money, like creating a wax sculpture first and then cast it in bronze or other metals. So 3D printed is a cheaper method in creating very complex shapes and objects. So for Nick Erving, technological innovation is something that should be embraced by the art world. Each generation of artists has its disposal a different set of possibilities enabled by technology. Paint in tubes allowed the Impressionists to paint in plein air rather than the studio, catching the changing quality of light and shadow. The development of silkscreen printing spurred Andy Warhol to create some of his most iconic works. Another examples on how technology is used by artists to their advantage. And obviously this will continue. So here we have a 3D printed sculpture on the left-hand side, clearly inspired by Rubens' painting on the right-hand side, also by Nick Irving, and it's called Jardo Nulk sculpture, and it is from 2009 to 2010. So he obviously took some time, or maybe he even took a break from making this art. This is another sculpture. It is called Air Force 3D from 2014 by Damilola Oduzote. And it clearly represents some of the iconographies that are connected with how the artist sees the United States of America. So it's kind of a larger Nike shoe. Then we have the Empire State Building in the background and someone that is balancing from one to the other building. And we have the famous airplane Air Force 2, which he uses as a name to go with Air Force 3D, because it is 3D printed. Another piece of, another piece of 3D printed art by Robert Geschleider, and this one is using wood. It looks like plastic, but it is actually 3D printed wood. So how does 3D printed wood work? It is milled timber, and it is very fine grain, which is put in a filament that goes into the 3D printer and is then printed to create those objects. This is the largest artwork that I could find so far. It is by Michael Hansmeyer and Benjamin Dillenburger, and it's an entire room that if you travel to Amsterdam, you would be able to visit. And the way it is produced is they have created smaller objects, but they have assembled it. And also this one is inspired not by nature, but by Fibonacci numbers. It is a 11-ton installation and printed with millions of incredible detailed surfaces. It stands almost 3.35 meters tall by 16 meters wide. So next time if you travel to the Netherlands, you might have a chance to actually see the artwork. I would like to move on to drone technology in art. So drones are more formally known as unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV. Essentially, a drone is a flying robot. The aircraft may be remotely controlled or can fly autonomously through software-controlled flight plans in their embedded systems working in conjunction with GPS. So what is GPS? GPS stands for Geopositioning Systems. It uses satellites, and with the help of satellites you can control the position of an object on our planet. And drones work this way. You can control a drone using a controller, or you can program a drone and it finds its way automatically by the use of GPS satellites. The emergence and proliferation of drone technology has inspired a vibrant response from the art world. Drone art includes both works that are created using drone technology and works that in some way address or depict a drone, as mentioned earlier. Examining drone art provides an opportunity to consider how society is responding to this technology and incorporating it into its cultural vocabulary. Drone art is also a case study in how new transformative technologies are adopted by artists, sometimes as a means of protesting against the technology, using technology to protest against the exact technology itself, and other times as a way to champion it, to embrace it and make something incredible out by using that technology. In 1995, the Bureau of Inverse Technology flew a rudimentary camera-equipped remote control airplane over a number of technology company campuses in Silicon Valley. And this is what we see in this picture here. So this is kind of a drone art installation early on from 1995. On that picture here by the artist James Bridle, Drone Shadows is a one-to-one scale outline of various military drones painted in public spaces in various cities. So when you get to a crime scene, you see that the investigators often draw a white line around the victim. And this is exactly what this piece of art is doing. So in this case, it's a play with thought. Is the drone the victim? Or is the shadow of the drone creating victims? Because we use also drones in warfare, and they come out of the blue. And the interesting thing is that the people who drive those drones, they obviously are very not connected with their victims. So this is kind of a game. So here we go. We are going back to Eddie Wagenknecht, an artist I started my presentation with. And she really likes the idea of technology in arts. She is using here surveillance cameras, and the surveillance cameras are surveying the public, the visitors of her art space, while we are observing and surveying her art, which is often used with is created using different technologies. So we also saw Katsu's work Seasonal Depression, and here it is in its full glorious. Very nice. And this is how it's created. On the left hand side we have the drone flying and hovering in front of the blank canvas, and a spray can attach to it. And I did do some research. The drone itself is programmed to create this artwork. So it's not that the artist is remotely controlling the drone and purposefully spraying art on the canvas. It is a program that does it for us. So in a way, the artist thinks about that technology and uses programming and artificial intelligence to create the art. In this picture, we don't see the drone, but the drone has taken the picture. And this is a village in Afghanistan where we see on the fields a huge picture, an image of a girl, of a young girl that has been killed by a drone. Very clever. In this picture, we see 3 drones accompanying 3 dancers of a contemporary dance by Daito Manabe from 2014. It's called 11 Play. So the drones, they move accordingly to the movement of the dancers. My understanding is that there are pilots in the audience piloting the drones, but a clever programmer also could use some programming and motion detection to follow a person in a space. You might have seen drones using as a means to creating kind of light displays, like fireworks, but just with LED lighting. And this is a picture depicting exactly that. It's called Drone 100, a Magical Experience 2016. And it's called Drone 100 because 100 small drones are creating that beautiful artwork. The photographer has used a long exposure, and this is why we see all the light streaks coming from above and down. That could be the takeoff of the drone or the descent of the drone. Let's move on to augmented reality, another new technology that is making its way into the art world. Augmented reality, short AR, is a live, direct or indirect view of physical real-world environment whose elements are augmented or supplemented by computer-generated sensory inputs such as sound, video, graphics or global positioning systems data. Okay, so in this picture we see a person holding an iPad and we see a sculpture. But what we do not see is how this sculpture, or in this case it's a piece of architecture, a house, will look once it's built. Using that technology enables us to project anything into a landscape and foresee the future in this way. This is another sample where an artist, what's his name? It doesn't say. Heavy Bierman, a leading augmented reality artist, transmedia scholar, that's his name, Heavy Bierman, has stepped up efforts to re-image public spaces through AR. So what he's done, he went into public spaces and there is already art, and he augmented the existing art with his own style. So here we see art from the past and he had augmented the art. So if you would have a mobile phone, just like mine, and you would walk through a public space, you could download an app from this artist, Heavy Bierman, and you could see all his augmentations that he made to existing art. Kind of clever. There is another example by Heavy Bierman, and it is called, what does it say? Doesn't say. So it's also from the series. That's his interpretation. LISA architecture, a part of augmented reality at the Omni International Art Center in 2013. So this is an environmental art. It's a park space. And the Architectural Bureau, they have projected sculptures into that park. They do not exist as such. You cannot touch them, but you can visually enjoy them using that kind of technology. Another interesting example by Brian Cox from Magic Leap. It's called Yellow Submarine. And it is the Yellow Submarine from the Beatles movie, Yellow Submarine, but this one here is from 2015 and not from the 70s. And using specific goggles or a tablet, you can walk through the city of London and you see the Yellow Submarine hovering through and over the cityscape. Same artist, Brian Cox from Magic Leap, Whale Leap. So here we see a huge humpback whale leaping out of the ocean onto the beach. Yeah? The whale seems to beach itself onto the beachgoers, but they are not aware of what is happening because only we can see it because we have the augmented reality app. Let's move on to the last piece of technology that I would like to introduce in my presentation. It's called projection mapping. Projection mapping, also known as video mapping and spatial augmented reality, is a projection technology used to turn objects, often irregularly shaped, into display surface for video projection. In this picture on the right, it's called SEPA, Wings of Desire, from 2012 in Birmingham, where the artist has used huge light projectors to project the art, which is often moving and accompanied by sound, onto this building here. The next example depicts a performance within a space where the artist has created 3D objects that seem to be in the space, but they're actually not because they are all projected into the space. Similar to what we've seen previously, here we see an industrial robot seemingly picking up an object where a dancer is interacting with the object, but the object does not exist. It is all just projected into the space. Oscar and Gasper live phase projection mapping from 2012 shows us a person sitting in front of a monitor, and as she stares onto the screen, her face is changing, is morphing into different faces. And this is also has been achieved through projection mapping. Antoni Gaudi, Casa Batilio in Barcelona. So every evening the city puts on those beautiful, beautiful projections onto one of his buildings, and it depicts the history of his art. So if you ever have a chance to go there, that is quite amazing. Well, that concludes my presentation of some of the latest technologies in art, and I hope you enjoyed it and it was kind of inspirational. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask me the questions via discussion boards, or you can send me an email. Thank you so much.